Hello there. Today I'm going to cover the basics of using Facebook's Spatial Workstation in Reaper. If you've never used a digital audio workstation before, which I'll be referring to in the future as a DAW, I recommend watching a tutorial on Reaper before continuing. So first, I'm going to open Facebook's example Reaper project, which can be found in the installation folder of the Spatial Workstation under Reaper, Workstation, and right here. So now, first I'm going to save this as my own project because I don't want to risk overwriting such a useful template and having to re-download and reinstall. So I have one on the desktop already, and then we'll be ready to go. So, the structure of this plugin is fairly simple. It's divided into the 3D tracks here, which are where you'd place any sounds that you wanted to be spatialized, that is, to sound as though they're coming from the virtual environment that you're placing the listener in, the area that you've filmed, or the area that you've created in Unity or Unreal Engine. And the second is the control plugin, which you shouldn't have to fool around with too much, but can be used to change the spatialization. And then stereo tracks, where you'd place something like background music that you didn't want to be spatialized. For neatness sake, I'm going to get rid of all the tracks that I don't currently need. I'll only need one spatial track, and I'll only need one stereo track. And I'll get rid of these text boxes because they will clutter the audio. And now I am going to talk about effects, yes, because effects are where you'll be doing a lot of your work when you're mixing. If you click on the FX button, then you will see a list of all the effects currently being applied to that track up here. In this case, by default, just one, the spatializer. This is the most important effect for determining where a sound seems to be coming from. It has four main values here: azimuth, elevation, distance, and spread. You won't need to worry about changing attenuation, and you don't need to enable Doppler or room to get a decent effect. The azimuth, elevation, and distance are key for informing the user precisely where the sound is coming from. Spread is a measure of how pinpoint the direction of the sound is. When the spread is low, the sound seems as though it's coming very, very precisely from a certain location. When the spread is high, it's more diffuse and harder to locate. Normally, you'll want your spread to be low, but often when you turn your head with a low spread, the change in volume of the sound is a little bit drastic, so you may need to increase the spread slightly to diminish that effect. In order to synchronize the audio well with your video, you can load your video right into here. I'll use this demo. And open it up, and you'll see that you can click and drag to place your sound anywhere in your video that you please. So let's say I wanted to have the sound coming from the sun, just because I can. You'll notice that the azimuth and elevation have changed accordingly, but the distance hasn't. Azimuth, for the record, is the horizontal rotation, and elevation is the vertical rotation. The distance here, I can just manipulate with the slider, or I could use this overhead view and click and drag just as I am over here, but I prefer this as it's more precise, and I'll say, oh, around 2 meters away should be just fine. And now I'm going to, for the record, input left is fine. Left, right, and mix down are all the same if you're using a mono file. If your file is stereo, you may as well use mix down, but it doesn't make a huge difference in any case. Now, we can listen to the actual sound of what I've just done. I'm going to select all of this. I could have just pressed play, but I'm about to loop it by selecting that and clicking the toggle repeat. I won't have to stop and start again if we get past the end of the audio. It'll just loop within this white region that I've selected. So let's play and then go to the video.
Last night, the second tornado in 8 days hit Ontario. The first was in Windsor a week ago yesterday.
Notice that when
Last
I look
night,
to
another
the right
one
of the
whirled
sun,
across the international boundary and struck Fort
the
Francis.
audio is on my left.
Jack McLaren of CKFI interviews a man who dodged a rowboat and a
As I look
building
at
in the
sun,
storm.
it's directly in front of me.
Life in Fort Francis is
As I
gradually
look to the
returning to
left of the
normal
sun,
today
it's
after the
directly
worst
to my
storm in the
right.
history of the town. Citizens were hard at work
Now,
today, clearing
as I
lines,
spin around,
trucking away fallen
so will
trees,
the
and
sound.
repairing buildings. Electric power was restored to most sections of the town today, but some areas may still be in darkness
now I'm going
tonight.
to keep that on my left.
No one knows exactly what happened. It
I'm going
was
to
so
make it
sudden.
slightly more distant.
But here's Mr. Jim Cunningham of Fort Francis, who was on the Rainy River waterfront, one of the most badly damaged areas when the storm
And back.
struck. Mr. Cunningham, will you describe in your own words what you saw?
Well, I see
Now I'm
a
going to
boat
change
flying
the
over my
spread.
head, and I wheeled back, and I happened to look up, and I see a part of a building going over my head,
So notice now,
which landed right in my lawn at the
it's
right
not
in my
quite as
front of my
pointedly
house,
to our right.
buried it about
And
2
here,
feet in the
if I
ground.
were to rotate,
Some of the 2x4s. It was the worst I ever seen. I don't want to get caught in another one.
Last
doesn't
night,
really
the second
change
tornado in
quite
8
as
days hit
noticeably.
Ontario. The first was in Windsor a week ago yesterday. Last night, another one whirled
And
across the
if I
international
lower
boundary
my spread,
and struck Fort
you'll
Francis.
notice
Jack McLaren of
It
CKFI
changes
interviews a
very
man who
noticeably.
dodged a rowboat and a building in the storm.
So those are some of the parameters.
Life in
And
Fort
that's
Francis
just about
is
all we
great.
have for this tutorial. But before we stop, I'm going to throw in one last trick. We haven't used any stereo audio yet, and so I've prepared some newscast music to accompany this. Because I know it's loud, I'm going to preemptively lower the volume, and let's see how this sounds.
Last night, the second tornado in 8 days hit Ontario. The first was in Windsor a week ago yesterday. Last night, another one whirled across the international boundary and struck Fort Francis. Jack McLaren of CKFI interviews a man who dodged a rowboat and a building in the storm.
So this is a lot
Life
of
in
fun.
Fort
as you can see.
Francis is gradually returning to normal today after the worst storm in the history of the town.
And I'll just leave it at that. So in the next tutorial, I will be talking about some more advanced mixing, specifically using EQ, reverb, and envelopes and automation. Thank you for watching, and I hope this has been helpful.